Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Certificate Needed. I work in IT and have been working with my current company for close to 2 years. I started in one of the lowest positions available, but slowly took on more responsibility as my IT directors were repeatedly fired by upper management. In my short time at this company, I have had 4 managers, a new CTO and 5 of my colleagues be fired. And we had a network breach by Russians. But I have never been given praise or compensation for helping mitigate the crisis. In this time, I have made efforts to improve the company's systems and have spent hundreds of hours automating several tasks, which saved the IT department around 80 hours of work a week. My goal was to get promoted, as I was doing the work of someone in infrastructure while in the position of someone much lower. Earlier in the year, I asked my boss for additional training and a raise. He stated that he had to wait till the yearly performance review for me to receive a raise, but that he would give me some training with infrastructure techs to further my career. Months pass and I'm barely included on email threads, which is his form of training. My yearly review comes and I ask my boss for the promised raise and promotion. He says I don't have the training and I would need a specific certification that he has, which is notoriously difficult to obtain. My CTO was also in my performance review and agreed with my boss that the certification was needed to advance. This was the first time I got told that I needed, and so I left the meeting infuriated. I got out of work at 5, immediately searched for a question dump for the certification and studied the questions till about 4 AM. I scheduled the certification test for 6 AM and barely passed. I walked into work, placed the certification on my manager's desk and asked for a raise again. His look of disbelief gave me so much joy. He still argued against the raise, but I took it to the CTO and he told the manager to give me the promotion. This happened a couple of days ago and I'm still riding the high. The next story is called Put Everything in One Bag. Cue back to a part-time job I was working at in a small grocery store. This is right after the county had passed a law forcing us to charge for bags. This was really just to give incentive for people to bring their own reusable bags. This of course ticked people off to no end and they take it out on us. I was actually really good at bagging groceries, like I would regularly get complimented on my efficiency. People would say give me 3 bags and I'd counter I can get it all in 2. Anyways, I had one particular grumpy customer who was very annoyed with the bag situation. He did not want to pay 10 cents for a stronger plastic bag. No, he wanted the 5-cent paper bag with no handles. He also demanded I make everything fit into one bag. I warned him, if I put it all into this one bag, it's probably going to break. Are you sure you don't want me to split it up into 2 bags? But of course he refused. Did I mention that along with some canned goods, produce and a few other things he had 3 bottles of wine? Well, I managed to pack everything into one bag and sent him on his way. Cut to 3 minutes later. This sad sack comes back into the store with a ripped paper bag soaking wet with wine, asking if we'll replace his broken bottles because his bag ripped. Thankfully, my manager shut it down and flat out told him no, because that wasn't our fault as he didn't want to buy more than one bag or didn't use our card. The last story is called Slow Production Times. I worked for a precast concrete company as a job in between high school and college. The job sucked, but it paid well. We made a lot of the massive storm culverts and tunnel pieces that are dropped in place during construction instead of being made where they are. To put this in perspective, our largest casting firm could handle pieces 40 times 30 feet. Absolutely massive pieces. After a few weeks of working for this company, I was trained to run the industrial concrete mixer and did this every day. This mixer was 3 stories tall, mixed up to 4.5 cubic yards of concrete at a time and was the most beat up machine in the entire plant, which was saying something. It ran 6 days a week, 2 shifts a day and was never maintained because the company couldn't get techs to come out on Sunday. Sunday was the only day that it was not running and they didn't want to lose a work shift to get it maintained. The only good thing about it was that all the materials were rated and fed in automatically. All it took was a button to start the process. The most common problem was the bottom release door not sealing correctly. It would be just barely cracked, allowing all the water to run out of it, resulting in an unusable chunky mess that would need to be dumped in a scrap hole instead of being used. If this happened, the mess needed to be dumped out of the mixer quickly before it could partially harden inside the mixer. This only happened once that I was there, and it took an entire shift to chisel the stuff out. We put a mark into the sliding door to show where it should be versus where it would be when it didn't seal. The process worked like this. A cage of rebar and anchor points was constructed on a base, around a core, and a form bolted around it. The QA guy signed off and the form was then filled with concrete and left to cure. The curing time largely depends on the ambient temperature. The hotter it is, the faster it cures and vice versa. Once the piece was cured enough to be lifted, the form is stripped and the piece lifted by crane off the core. Repeat until you have as many pieces as ordered. Another thing to note is hardhat colors. They were color coded according to your role. Blue are plant supervisors, green QA, red the foreman, etc. For the normal workers there was a choice of 2 colors. Yellow for people who don't know what they are doing, typically new or dumb people, and grey for those that do. This was about 5 months into my time with them, and I had just got a grey one maybe 2 months before. Our plant was starting to produce pieces at a substantially slower rate than the other plant owned by the company. We were working 10 to 12 hours every day to try and make up the difference. Typically, multiple pieces were made per form, per day, 2 to 4. We were only managing 1 and maybe 2 per form, per day. To figure out the reason for this, the owner's plan was to send an executive from the main office to observe and time every section of the process in our plant. This in itself was silly. Remember how I said the speed the concrete cures is based on temperature? Our plant was in an unheated warehouse in a state bordering Canada, in the winter. The other plant was in Florida. Can you guess why production was a bit slower in our plant? In any case, during the shift meeting before the executive got there, our foreman's exact words were, "Do what he tells you, otherwise stay the heck away from him." Wonderful. The shift proceeds as normal. Building cages and forms get bolted. Maybe 6 hours into the shift I climb up on top of the mixer to the platform and I'm greeted by the executive in the shiniest white hard hat I have ever seen. And office attire complete with black dress shoes. In a concrete plant. He looked bored out of his mind. He asked me something to the effect of if I was looking forward to the end of the shift in 2 hours. I told him that with no problems we might get to leave in 4 hours. He got the most defeated look on his face and mumbled something that I didn't catch. I went through the pre-checks on the mixer and found the bottom door was once again not closing properly. I yelled down to the plant supervisor that the door wasn't sealing again and that the machine would be down until I got it to seal. This was normally done by shipping the concrete left by the previous shift after using the mixer away from the opening. The plant supervisor yelled back a few choice expletives directed at the mixer and stormed into his office. The executive had a look and said he thought the door looked fine. I told him that it did this a lot and that it wasn't sealed, pointed out the mark to him and went to get the tool I grabbed a fabricator with energy drinks to make for me to chip away the concrete. A braking bar welded onto a rebar shaft that I kept under the mixer itself. No more hunting down an air gun and going through confined space, just stand on top and poke at the concrete until the door moves freely. Upon coming back with the tool, the executive told me that the seal was fine and to run it. I pointed out the same thing about the door not sealing regularly. I asked if they were sure. They replied in the affirmative. So I started up the mixer. The mixer regularly threw a bunch of silica up into the air. With the water draining out the bottom, this was going to get extra dusty. I offered them an extra mask that I had and they replied that they would be fine. Well, it's not my lungs. At the same time I noticed the plant's heavy equipment guy walking into the building and got his attention and made a hand gesture for the front loader. I got a WTF look from them and they mouthed why. I pointed down at the mixer, repeated the gesture and they threw up their hands and turned around. The load went into the mixer, water started raining out the bottom, dust goes everywhere. Go figure. The plant supervisor comes out of the office, I assume after seeing the giant cloud on the cameras, once over and says something like, "What the heck are you doing?" The mixer is quite loud with concrete in it, but I got the general gist. I just pointed to the executive who was now covered in dust and staring at the water pouring out the bottom of the mixer. Never said a word. The plant supervisor's head swiveled and he just crooked a finger at the executive. The executive climbed down. They exited the building with the plant supervisor leading. The front loader was able to get to the mixer before the mess was able to partially cure inside it, so the cleanup was as easy as dumping it into the bucket and then dumping that in the scrape hole and spraying out the mixer. We continued the shift after I shipped the concrete away from the door and got it closing properly again. Not too much time wasted, maybe an hour. The foreman asked what happened later in the shift and didn't stop laughing for the rest of it. The plant supervisor talked to me afterward, asked what happened and told me he didn't blame me for that idiot's mistake, since he had said to do what the executive said. I never saw the executive again and the plant supervisor never said what happened in the parking lot. I can only assume that the most is produced were angry phone calls and a lot of concrete wasted. I left about 3 months later, but I never heard anything else about slow production times from the main office. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories and today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.